I didn't choose that credit union because it was convenient. I chose it because I believed in it. That detail matters, because if I had walked into a massive corporate bank with glass walls and security guards, I would have expected coldness. I would have expected delay. I would have expected to be treated like a number. But this place? This place promised something different. Local. Personal. Community-focused. Those words were everywhere: pamphlets, posters, even the website. Smiling employees posed in group photos like they knew every customer's story, like they'd helped build something together. I remember thinking, this feels safer. Safer than institutions too big to care. Safer than faceless systems. And for a long time, it worked. I'd walk in, nod to the tellers, exchange small talk. Nothing remarkable, and that was the point. Stability doesn't make noise. It hums quietly in the background while you live your life. Which is why the morning my card failed didn't register as danger at first. It was just off. The ATM screen blinked longer than usual. The machine made a mechanical sound I hadn't heard before. Then my card slid back out, accompanied by a polite, useless message. Unable to process transaction. No explanation. No warning. I stood there longer than necessary, staring at the screen like it might blink again and admit it was joking. It didn't. Still calm, still trusting the system, I walked inside the branch. The doors chimed softly behind me. Everything smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and old paper. The same motivational posters hung on the walls: your financial future starts here. The clerk didn't look surprised when I explained what happened. That should have been my first signal. She typed for a while, eyes narrowing slightly, then reached down and handed me a small piece of paper. A code. She explained, casually, confidently, that if an ATM ever failed, this code could be used to deduct cash directly from my account. I hesitated. I remember that hesitation clearly because part of me already sensed imbalance. I asked if this would cause any problems later. She smiled. It's fine, she said. It's literally what it's for. Those words anchored my decision. So I used the code. I got my cash. And I walked out believing everything was normal. For 2 days, nothing happened. And then, quietly, surgically, everything stopped. I didn't find out my account was frozen in a dramatic way. There was no warning email. No phone call. No notification using words like urgent or important. It revealed itself slowly, almost politely, the way systems do when they don't think they owe you an explanation. I opened my banking app the next morning out of habit, not concern. I just wanted to check my balance. I'd done it 1,000 times before. Swipe. Fingerprint. Home screen. Except this time, the numbers didn't line up. My balance was still there. But everything beneath it was gray. Unavailable. Pending. Processing. I closed the app. Opened it again. Same thing. At first, my brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's syncing. Maybe maintenance. Maybe it's just a delay from yesterday. I refreshed again. Nothing. I tapped the transfer button. It spun, then quietly failed. That's when my stomach tightened. I logged in on my laptop. Same result. Balance visible. Funds untouchable. That's a uniquely unsettling feeling, seeing money that is theoretically yours, but functionally imaginary. It's like looking through a window at your own belongings while someone else holds the key. I called the bank. This time, I wasn't relaxed. But I wasn't panicked either. I still believed this was a misunderstanding, something a human would resolve once they saw the context. The automated menu felt longer than usual. Each option read in the same pleasant voice, offering help without urgency. When a representative finally answered, I explained the issue carefully. Slowly. I made sure to sound reasonable. Cooperative. He put me on hold. I listened to muffled music and the hum of a call center. When he came back, his tone was different. Professional. Neutral. Slightly distant. He said my account had been flagged for review. That word again. Review. I asked why. There was a pause, the kind of pause where you know the person on the other end is choosing which words not to use. He said there was an accounting discrepancy. A delay in proper deduction after a teller-assisted withdrawal. I reminded him that they instructed me to use that process. Silence. Yes, he said finally. But the system still needs to confirm. I asked how long that would take. Another pause. There's no specific timeline. That sentence landed heavier than it should have. No timeline means no obligation. No urgency. No accountability. I asked if I should be worried. He said, it's standard procedure. Standard. Another word that hides responsibility behind routine. I hung up and told myself to wait. Just a day or two. This would correct itself. Except it didn't. Day 2 came and went. Then day 3. I tried making a small purchase, declined. Tried transferring $1, failed. Still calm, but now alert, I called again. Different representative. Same script. Same detached reassurance. Except this one sounded tired, like I'd interrupted something important by asking for my own money. When I mentioned that rent was coming up, she said, unfortunately, that doesn't change the process. Not I'm sorry. Not I understand. Just, unfortunately. By the end of the first week, something fundamental shifted inside me. The anxiety wasn't loud yet, but it was constant. It followed me around like background noise. A low hum beneath every thought. Every small decision carried weight now. Can I eat out? Can I afford groceries? What if this lasts longer? I started checking the app obsessively, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Nothing changed. The second week is when optimism died. I called support again. This time, the representative sounded openly irritated. He sighed before answering my question. When I asked why the review was taking so long, he said, "Sir, these processes cannot be rushed." Rushed. As if I was being demanding rather than desperate. I asked if there was someone else I could speak to. A supervisor. A manager. Anyone. He told me someone would reach out if necessary. They never did. And that's when it started to feel personal. Not overtly, not in a way I could easily point to. But in the tone shifts, the clipped responses. The way conversations ended abruptly once my name came up. I remember one call where the rep asked me to confirm my last name twice. Not because she misheard it. But because she pronounced it slowly. Carefully. There was a pause afterward. Then she said, "All right." No explanation. No follow-up. Just acknowledgement and distance. By the middle of the second week, sleep became fragmented. I'd wake up at night thinking about numbers. Deadlines. Scenarios where this review never ended. I started running worst-case outcomes through my head. What if they close the account? What if they accuse me of fraud? What if I never see that money again? Those thoughts are exhausting because they don't arrive all at once, they drip-feed themselves into your mind until you're too tired to push them away. My body reacted before my logic could. Shoulders always tense. Jaw clenched unconsciously. Heart rate spiking at every unknown phone call. And the worst part? There was nothing I could do. No form to fill out. No escalation button to press. Just waiting. Waiting while being subtly reminded, again and again, that I had no leverage. By the end of the second week, I realized something chilling. They weren't in a hurry because they didn't feel watched. To them, I wasn't a customer with a problem. I was a quiet inconvenience. A line item. A file open on someone's screen that could remain unresolved without consequences. And they knew it. By the third week, the problem was no longer the money. It was what the lack of money was doing to me. The fear wasn't sharp anymore, it was heavy. A thick, exhausting weight that sat in my chest from the moment I woke up until I finally fell into shallow sleep. I stopped checking the banking app obsessively. Not because I didn't care, but because every time I opened it, the silence felt personal. It's strange how quickly dignity erodes when you lose control over basic things. I started measuring days and obligations instead of time. Rent. Bills. Food. Every decision came with math attached, mental subtraction. Estimation. Delay. I avoided spending money even when I technically had some elsewhere because my brain couldn't trust numbers anymore. Trust was gone. I called the bank again. This time, I didn't explain the situation from the beginning. I just gave my name. That's when I noticed it. The pause. It wasn't long, maybe a second, maybe two, but it was there. A beat of silence while they pulled up my file. Everything changed after that beat. The voice became colder. The patience thinned. The conversation shortened. One representative asked, out of nowhere, if I had recently traveled internationally. No reason given. I hadn't. Another asked whether I fully understood how teller-assisted withdrawals worked. I reminded her that a clerk had instructed me to use it. Well, she said, misunderstandings happen. Misunderstandings. Not mistakes. Not errors. Misunderstandings happen when responsibility needs to be blurred. By now, I could feel the shift clearly, not just in words, but in attitude. They weren't investigating an issue anymore. They were evaluating me. That realization changes how you sit in your chair during a phone call. It makes you choose words carefully. It makes you apologize for things you didn't do. I caught myself thanking them excessively. For what? For tolerating me. And then came the moment that broke something inside me. I called one afternoon after receiving another generic email about ongoing review. The representative sounded distracted, like she had already decided this call was a waste of time. She asked me to confirm my identity. Then she asked me to repeat my last name. I did. There was silence. She asked again, slower. I spelled it out. Another pause, longer this time. Then she said, all right, in a tone that wasn't neutral. It was final. I asked if there was progress on the review. She said, these processes take time. Please be patient. Patient. I almost laughed. 3 weeks without access to my own money wasn't patience. It was endurance. After that call, I sat quietly for a long time. Not angry. Empty. When institutions get tired of you, they don't argue. They wait you out. They rely on the fact that you'll eventually stop calling. Stop pushing. Stop existing as a problem. That night, sleep didn't come easily. I kept thinking about how little effort it took for them to ruin my month. No malicious intent. No dramatic conflict. Just indifference. Indifference backed by power is terrifying because it doesn't need justification. I stopped making plans altogether. Declined invitations. Delayed life. I didn't want to explain. Didn't want the pity. Didn't want the questions. Why don't you just switch banks? As if I could. As if I had access to my funds. By the 4th week, something darker crept in. Fear that this was intentional. Fear that my account wouldn't be unfrozen at all. Fear that I'd missed some invisible rule and was now being punished for existing slightly outside the norm. That's the kind of fear that eats away at your sense of self. It's subtle. You start questioning your tone. Your paperwork. Your identity. I'd replay every interaction in my head, searching for something I did wrong, something I could fix. There was nothing. And that's when it finally hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a delay. This was what happens when a system realizes it can ignore you safely. No audience. No pressure. No consequences. I was invisible. And invisibility is a dangerous place to be. That realization settled in quietly, and didn't leave. Until I called my family. I didn't call my family because I wanted solutions. I called because I needed to hear voices that didn't belong to a system. There's a difference. Institutional voices are designed to neutralize emotion. Family voices remind you that your frustration makes sense. The call connected late in the evening. Time zones blurred together the way they always do. Faces appeared on my screen, familiar, relaxed, living in a world where this problem didn't exist. At first, I downplayed it. I always do. I said the bank was being slow. That there was a technical issue. That it would probably be resolved soon. But something about saying it out loud cracked the restraint I'd been holding onto. The words began stacking up. I talked about the locked funds. The phone calls. The way conversations changed once they heard my name. The helpless waiting. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. My younger cousin watched quietly the whole time. He didn't interrupt. Didn't react. When I finally stopped talking, he leaned forward slightly, resting his chin on his hand. Then he smiled. It wasn't mocking. It was curious. And that's what caught my attention. You know why they're not moving, he said. I shrugged. Because they don't need to. He nodded. Exactly. He paused, then said something that initially sounded stupid. Why don't you let the internet talk instead? I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it felt absurd. I told him this wasn't a restaurant review problem. This was a bank. A regulated institution. He rolled his eyes. You're still thinking like it's about rules, he said. They're thinking about visibility. Then he told me about a website. Some faceless platform that paid people a few rubles per post to publish content on social media. Pennies. Fractions of cents. The kind of thing you'd dismiss as spam infrastructure. To them, it was work. To me, it would be amplification. They don't care about one angry customer, he said. But they care about looking unreliable. I didn't respond right away. My instinct was to reject the idea on moral grounds. It felt manipulative. Artificial. But the longer the call went on, the more my resistance weakened. Because the truth was simple, I had tried being reasonable. I had tried following the process. I had tried patience. And the system had rewarded me with silence. I asked questions. Would this be illegal? Could it be traced? Would it escalate things in the wrong direction? My cousin shrugged. Do you think they can prove who wrote an angry comment? He had a point. I imagined the credit union's social pages, still polished, still smiling, still pretending everything was fine. I imagined potential customers scrolling past promotional posts, unaware of what was happening behind the scenes. And I imagined something else too. What would happen inside the bank if that image cracked? What if suddenly, someone noticed? The idea felt dangerous not because it was illegal, but because it worked. I told myself I'd think about it. After the call ended, I sat alone in silence. No TV. No music. Just the faint sound of my laptop fan. I opened the banking app again, out of habit, out of spite. Nothing had changed. A month had nearly passed. Something inside me hardened. This wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to disappear. I opened a browser tab. Typed the website address my cousin sent. The page loaded without ceremony, no logo, no personality. Just drop-down menus and pricing tiers. Cheap, embarrassingly cheap. $3 would buy me hundreds of posts. I hesitated at the payment screen. This was the last moment where I could still walk away. I thought about the rules. About optics. About restraint. And then I thought about every condescending pause on the phone. Every dismissive sigh. Every night I'd stared at my ceiling wondering how long this would last. The system had already crossed the ethical line first. I clicked confirm. I expected to feel something dramatic when I clicked confirm. Guilt. Adrenaline. Fear. Instead, I felt calm. Not relief, calm. The kind that comes when a decision has already been made deep inside you, and the rest of your mind is just catching up. The website redirected me to a blank dashboard. No fanfare. No animation. Just options. Profile type. Platform. Region. It was disturbingly efficient. I started slowly. I didn't want rage. Didn't want theatrics. What I wanted was believability. I chose American-sounding names. Neutral profile photos. Ages that blended into the background of social media feeds. Nothing that screamed fake. Then came the prompts. This part took longer than expected, not because it was difficult, but because it mattered. Every post needed to feel like it came from a real person on a real day who had finally lost patience. I avoided accusations. I focused on experiences. Has anyone else had their account frozen with no explanation? Been waiting weeks for access to my funds. Support keeps dodging. Used to trust this credit union. Not anymore. Each sentence was clean. Calm. Frustrated in a restrained way. The most dangerous complaints aren't the loud ones. They're the ones that sound tired. I scheduled the posts in waves. Not all at once, that would look suspicious. Slow accumulation, like dissatisfaction naturally surfacing. Then I waited. At first, nothing happened. That almost shook my confidence. For a moment, it felt like yelling into a void. I refreshed the credit union's Facebook page and saw the same promotional posts. Same smiling faces. Same sterile enthusiasm. Then, a comment appeared. Buried under a post about community outreach. Is anyone else having trouble accessing their account? It sat there quietly, unanswered. 5 minutes later, another. 10 minutes later, a reply. Someone else, not a bot, replied. Actually, yes. My heart sped up. This wasn't just noise anymore. It was momentum. By the next hour, the page started looking different. Not chaotic. Not explosive. Uneasy. Posts were being buried under questions. Replies contradicted marketing copy. The illusion of control cracked. Twitter followed. Short posts. Screenshots. Threads. Nothing defamatory. Just cumulative doubt. And doubt spreads faster than outrage. I kept watching. I noticed when comments were deleted. That's when I knew it was working. Because silence is the first reflex of panic. Deleting one comment makes 2 people notice. Deleting 10 makes everyone look closer. I imagined what was happening inside the bank. An intern noticing abnormal engagement. A social media manager refreshing feeds too often. Someone saying, "This doesn't look normal." Emails being forwarded. Meetings being scheduled. Questions being asked that hadn't existed yesterday. By midday, the tone shifted. Official replies appeared. Generic. Vague. We're sorry to hear about your experience. Please DM us. The replies didn't slow anything down. They made it worse. Because now people knew the bank was watching. And still not fixing anything. By early afternoon, my phone rang. Private number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something told me not to. I answered. The voice on the other end was careful. Measured. Professional in a way that screamed damage control. He introduced himself as the call center manager. Not a representative. A manager. He said he'd been made aware of a situation involving my account. He said they understood my frustration. He apologized for the delays. Then, almost casually, he asked if I was open to resolving things quickly. That word again. Quickly. I said yes. He didn't argue. Didn't deflect. He offered immediate release of my funds. Full balance. Plus $50. Compensation. Not for the inconvenience. For the visibility. I asked how fast the transfer could happen. Today, he said. Just like that. A month of indifference undone in one phone call. Before ending the call, he added something subtle. He said they wanted to end things on a positive note. I understood what he meant. They wouldn't ask questions. If I didn't either. When the call ended, I sat there quietly. The complaints were still coming in. I watched one page reload and fill with comments. I didn't stop it. I didn't need to. The system had finally noticed me, and it didn't like what it saw. The transfer didn't happen instantly. And oddly enough, I was grateful for that. Because for the first time in over a month, I wasn't waiting in fear. I was waiting in certainty. The call had changed something fundamental. The power dynamic. They weren't evaluating me anymore. They weren't deciding whether I mattered. They already knew I did. I opened my banking app again that evening, not out of habit, but curiosity. The numbers were still frozen. But this time, I didn't feel that hollow drop in my chest. I didn't feel helpless. I felt calm. The storm had already passed. The delay was just logistics catching up to reality. I checked social media. The credit union's pages looked like a town square after an argument, half cleaned, half damaged. Some comments were gone. Others remained. New ones kept appearing. Genuine ones. People sharing similar experiences. People asking uncomfortable questions. People tagging friends and family. The bots had opened a door. Real customers walked through it. That realization stayed with me. I had started something I couldn't fully control anymore. And yet, that felt right, because accountability isn't meant to be convenient. Late that night, an email arrived. Subject, account update. Professional. Brief. It confirmed that my account restrictions had been lifted and that a full balance transfer was being processed to the institution of my choosing. Below that, a $50 courtesy credit has been applied. Courtesy. The word didn't bother me. Because I knew what it really was. A receipt. I slept deeply that night, the kind of sleep where dreams don't bother forming because your nervous system finally stands down. The next morning, the money was there. Every dollar. Safe. Accessible. Real again. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, letting my brain catch up. The tension left my body in waves. Shoulders dropped. Breathing slowed. That constant background hum, gone. It wasn't celebration I felt. It was release. Later that day, another call came. Same manager. Same careful tone. He thanked me for my patience. Said they were reviewing internal procedures. Assured me the situation was unfortunate. I listened quietly. When he finished, he added one last thing. He said they hoped I'd consider giving them positive feedback once everything settled. I almost laughed. But I didn't. I told him the truth instead. I'm just glad it's over. We ended the call politely. No accusations. No acknowledgements. That was the agreement. Afterward, I sat quietly and thought about how close I'd come to believing something false. That if you're calm enough, patient enough, polite enough, systems will eventually do the right thing. That belief is comforting. And dangerous. Because systems don't respond to fairness. They respond to pressure. Not anger. Not threats. Pressure. Visibility. Consequences. The bank didn't free my money because they suddenly cared. They freed it because caring became cheaper than not caring. And that's the part people don't like admitting. Justice, in the modern world, is often a cost calculation. I checked their social media again one last time. The complaints were slowing, not gone, but fading naturally. I felt a brief flicker of guilt. Then I remembered every dismissive pause. Every condescending tone. Every night I spent staring at a ceiling instead of sleeping. And the guilt evaporated. Because I hadn't lied. I hadn't threatened. I'd simply made the truth harder to ignore. The bots were still out there, still posting. Still repeating the question the bank couldn't answer fast enough. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. That was the cost of teaching a system a lesson. I closed the browser. Uninstalled the banking app. And for the first time in weeks, I went outside without that low-grade fear riding along with me. The world hadn't changed. I had. I understood now that power doesn't always come from authority. Sometimes it comes from refusing to remain invisible. From understanding where systems are fragile. From realizing that silence is only safe for those who benefit from it. I didn't destroy a bank. I didn't expose a conspiracy. I didn't break the law. I spent $3 and reminded a system that it existed in public. And that was enough.